Hey gang, today is a bit of an experiment. We're making a video, so let's dive in. We're looking at the Brighton and Hove Albion badge today. For all these Premier League logos so far, what I've been doing is looking at the history of each of the logos, and these are often online somewhere. It takes 5 minutes to do a quick bit of research. I always find this really interesting to see where they come from and where they're going to. So as we can see, we've had an interesting journey here at Brighton and Hove Albion. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall on this little transition where they've gone from the Dolphins to the Seagulls, a bit of the Sharks to the Jets, and who knows what happened in 1976. Oof, that must have been a torrid time for the Seagulls. And we've gone from the circle to a badge, and then back to the circle that we know today. And this is the badge that I know from when I was growing up. I grew up in Brighton and Hove, and a mate of mine, John, would have this kit on virtually 24/7. It was as though it was sewn onto him essentially. But I always found this seagull to not look very seagullish. This to me doesn't say seagull, especially this beak situation. That ain't a seagull. And I've seen a fair few seagulls. If you live in Brighton and Hove on the south coast, you're going to be attacked by seagulls on a relatively frequent basis, especially if you enjoy going to Greg's. This is the logo we have today. So let's look at this in more detail. And this is usually where I then start to look as to what I would potentially do differently, areas I like, areas I don't like, areas I'm going to tweak, so on and so forth. So I'm liking the typefaces. Obviously the colours are iconically Brighton and Hove Albion. Obviously we've got a seagull, brilliant. Areas, so a little gully here, these fine lines over these wings and these details, for me, they're too fine and they're going to get lost when this is scaled. And for me, the seagull looks very squashed, looks very, the scale of it and proportion of it just doesn't seem to be sitting right for me. And this rear section of a tail just seems a little bit too smooth. So let's look at how this scales. So like we said, once you start to shrink this bad boy down, you're losing that detail, and so you can't really, for me at least, it's not holding its own. Like I say, the typeface is working, but the overall feel, the impact gets a bit lost. So first things first, what I always do is I dive into Procreate on my iPad. I often have some of the inspiration up. I looked at some seagulls, surprise, surprise. From what I was saying of the original gull as it stands, I wanted the revised version to be more dynamic, to have more of this sort of wing shape involved, a bit more direction. So yeah, from there, other iconic Brighton areas such as the Royal Pavilion, the South Downs, wondering whether or not these could be incorporated into the crest logo itself. And so I sit there and I doodle and I sketch for a little while, playing with various ideas. And then I'm toing and froing usually with these ideas, and I was thinking this looks quite old school RAF was a thought pattern I had. This was the sort of seagull shapes I was straying more towards, so this little bad boy is what I was liking, where we've got clearer defined shapes making our seagull, and I'm going to have more space either side to give it a bit more breadth essentially. So let's dive into creating this, shall we? So let's First things first, I'm in Illustrator, as always. Let's get up a cheeky little grid. Let the madness commence. Oh, here we go. So usually with a grid, let's start to draw this bad boy out. And we're going to go through this process. Join me in a minute and we'll see how it goes.